Okay, and so last week we created last week was the first Vue lecture, and we created a very simple app which displayed the information of one product in the app. And then today we're going to add a little bit interaction. So we're going to try to add the add to cart button. So which is probably the most common one you will need for almost every website. And the add to cart button also related to inventory, because you should only allow people to add things to the cart when there is availability left. Okay, I'll enable the transcription. Yeah. And so that's again, so we're going to count, that's the second part. I'm going to check the inventory. And also every time when people click the add to cart button, that should reduce availability in the inventory. And finally, we're going to do a kind of very simple introduction to show the checkout page. So usually the user should have, say, a cart button or some other similar buttons. When they click, it should go to the checkout page, shows all the things they added to the cart. And usually at that time, you will hide the list of the products already. So we'll show that how to do that button. Okay. And in terms of the interaction, and we already did that in the earlier to-do examples, and we can click the add button, and then new items will be added to the to-do list. So at that time, we did in both the plain JavaScript and the Vue version. So the user type in something and they click add, and then that task will be added to the list. And that's what we meant by interaction. And so this is the way using just plain JavaScript. And just very quickly go through, you need to get a reference to the actual button itself. And you need to get the reference to the list you want to add the new task to. And then say when the onClick event is being triggered for the button, and you get so this one is the reference to the field where the user type in the new task. It will add a new task, and then you create a new ARI items that will contain the text for the new task, and this is called task items. And you set its text into the text user typed in the text field, and then the task list, which is this one here, which is the unordered list, would append child, which is adding these new items to the end. And finally, we set the value to empty. So it's clear out the text field so user can enter new things. Okay, and this is what we did in Vue. So here I showed a little bit HTML code as well. And so we're still using a text input field, but all we did is just says V model new task. And so the V model is, again, they call it a Vue directive, so like a new command defined in Vue. And what allows you to two-way linking between something on the web page, in this case, this input field, and with a variable defined in Vue, in this case would be called new task. So you can see in the Vue app, there is a variable called new task. And initially it will be empty. So that's what here means. That means this field will be empty when started. And we said V model is two-way linking. So that means if user changes, types in anything in the input field, and then the new task will update it automatically. You don't need to write any code that says get element by ID, get input field, and then get its value. It's not necessary. But also, and you can change the value of new task, and that would also change the text in the input field. That's what meant by two-way binding. Okay, and then the second part.
Sorry, sir, can you repeat that last bit, please?
Okay, the second part. Okay, the last bit is about, you mean the two-way binding for the new task?
Yes.
So you could say currently the new task, the value is empty, and you can, in your view app, you can change the value of new task to something else. That would also change the text in the input field. So that way you can also affect like a kind of, how do I say, pass the data back to the page, not just say, get the values from the HTML page, but also can change the values or set the values on the HTML page. And it will become clearer when we later on do this. Okay, and yeah, and just back here, and this is the part we add a button to the page. And this time we didn't use button element, we use input typo equals button, very similar. And its value will be add. That means I think we will show add as the text on the button. And this is the part. And again, it's view directive. So you probably, I think we covered the view on. No, we covered the v bind a bit more. So the v on click is similar to the on click in the previous slides. And so what it does is says, and it defines event handler. So v on is the definition is to define the event handler, again introduced by view, because it starts with v hyphen. And so the click defines which event, and this will be triggered. So it can be click, can be mouse over, any other type of events you would normally have in HTML or JavaScript. What here says is when it being clicked, so basically the button was clicked, and you do add item. So add item, you can see, is defined here. So that means when this button is clicked, we'll run this function, which is defined in the view. Okay, so that's actually related to this part, which is the method, which you haven't seen yet. Last week we talked about EL, which tells view the mounting point. In this case, will be the element whose ID is app, which is a div, which is not shown here. And we also talk about data, talking about these are the variables you can define that can be used in the view app. For example, you can use double curly brackets to show the values of the variable as text on HTML page. And so here is all the functions you can use, or the functions you define in the view. And yeah, just be careful. And you have to say method, not method. And if you miss S, and the view would not recognize, and it will not complain either, because to JavaScript, this is just a key you defined, followed by some values. But this key is not a key method itself. Without S, it's not a predefined key. So view would not recognize it, and the view would not know how to handle with it. And it only becomes error when you try to call add item function in your view app, but then the view will complain and say add item is not defined. And here you can have multiple methods. There's a few different ways. So this is one way to define function. And this is the part where you define a anonymous function. And it does not have any parameters. So you have this empty pair of brackets. And this is the so-called arrow function. And so this is the equivalent, you say function, bracket, and then curly bracket. That's the same thing. And this part is quite similar to this part did in the previous plain JavaScript version. And so you need to create an element. So that will be the new task being added to the list. Okay. And then you say new item dot inner text. So that's the list item, the inner text equal to app dot new task. Okay, so there's a couple of options here, and you can potentially. So first, I'll explain this. So when you say I say app dot task, and is because I give a name to my view instance. I call it app. So then app dot new task would refer to the new task in the data. And if you didn't give the view instance a name, you could potentially say this.new task, but that does not always work. Depends on, for example, whether this line of code is inside the loop or another function inside the item. So usually this is a safer way to do it. Okay, and then so it sets the text of this list item to new task, which is this variable here, which is linked to this input field. Okay, so as I explained before, and you don't need to say get document get element by ID and then get say task field dot value to get the values of text field. You don't need to do it anymore because the view that's already linked and value is already saved in new task. Okay, and then what you need to do is you need to get the list. So that's what this do, document get by ID task list. So assume that's the ID for the order list, and you add the child, which is a new item, which is here. Okay, so these three lines, these three lines would achieve what I've done before. So create the new items, list items, set its text as the text user typed in, and finally this line which adds the new items to the unordered list. Okay, and so this is the last line which resets the value of new task to empty. And the reason to do that is once user finish adding the task, by default, when user click this button, it will not clear the field. It will the old task will remain, all the text will remain. And sometimes this might be the desired behavior, and that's okay. But if you want to clear the field, so you have an empty field and user can enter a new task, you can do this. App.new task. What it changes, it sets the new task value to empty. So this is just two code with nothing in between. And what it would, because currently this value is the text that user typed in, what it will do, it will clear out this field, input field as well. Because as we said, the V model is two-way binding. So anything changed either on the page or in the view would affect the other one. So here we change the value of new task inside the view, and then this change will be reflected on the actual HTML page as well. Then this input field will be cleared. And that's what we do this one here. Okay. So, and then we're going to move on to the add to cart button, which is quite similar in a sense to the add button in the to-do list. Okay. So besides the add to cart button, and we're going to also create this checkout button. So this is checkout button where user can click, which will show the checkout page with a list of things in the cart and hide the product list. So we're going to look at these two buttons. Okay, so this is the product information. Okay, so okay, maybe I'll start the coding now. But before that, I'll just briefly explain. So this will be the data part of our Vue app. And we already done the site name and product last time. And site name just give you the title of the website or the app. And the product contains some details about the product. And in this first product, you have the ID, title, description, price, and image, etc. And you could have more than one. And so for this example, I think we'll just stay with one product. And if you have more than one, you can have an array of these JSON objects. And the main thing is now we have a cart, a new Vue variable called the cart. Currently, it's an array and it's empty. And so this will be the array. We're going to store everything user added to the cart. Okay, and so I'm gonna exit now. I'm gonna start coding, adding these to the code. Find the code from last week. Okay, let me see. Is this the... No, this is already the completed one. So last week, let's see. Okay, yeah, and so this is kind of where we started or stopped last week. We had, let me just quickly check if we have everything here. So it's using Vue, it's imported. So this is our mounting point, the div. I'll make it slightly bigger. And we bind the title, which is this one, to the name. And we find the image, that's URL. Okay. And then we bound the text title, which is here. And there's other information we haven't included yet. We could easily add with something similar. I'm surprised we didn't add those. Okay. Let me see this one. Is this any better? Okay, so this is a bit more. We added a little bit more. Okay, I'm gonna start some there. And let me move those to this week's demo. Ah. Okay, so I don't only need. So it's already have the file. We don't need this one. Okay, so we're gonna start from here. And just again, go through the code very quickly. Fairly standard HTML file. Only thing to remember is we need to load the Vue file. Don't forget, otherwise you can't use any of these Vue directives. I'm gonna start with the script part. So we defined a Vue instance and give it a name called web store. And its mounting point is #app. So that's this ID. And we defined some variables we're going to use site name, which we use the h1 v text equal to sign name, which give that this one, and I define the product, and it has a few attributes in the product, and which is JSON object ID, title, description, price, and image. And so we used, say, the title, description, and price. These are defined here. And the only thing is a bit different is the vbind, which talk about, and vbind is used to change any property of HTML element. And in this case, it's changing the source property of the image element. We set that to tell HTML where to find the picture, basically. That's product.image. That tells you that is the file. Because I didn't give, there's no file path or directory here. And all it gave is just a file name that will assume this picture is in the same directory as this HTML file, which is, otherwise it cannot be able to find it. So you can see, not week 3 anymore. In week 4, that's the file, and we have this file just called product fullsite.png. That's why I get here. Okay, and in terms of the, let me maybe do that in the here, and in terms here, and all the things just to start with, and we want the shopping cart to save everything added to the shopping cart. We need to find this new array. That's the only thing new here. So in the product, in the data of the product, we add cart, and which will be an array. Okay, and currently nothing is going to happen yet because we only define the array and haven't do anything to that yet, or use it for anything else. Okay, the next thing we need to do is, as we said before, we want to have this add to cart button. So first we need to add a button that we already saw in the to-do list example. So we can do exactly the same thing. I can add it here. I'm just being a bit lazy. And so, but mostly these are just HTML, so I don't need to explain again. An input type equal to button, value equal to added. That means the text will show up as added. And it says v on click equal to add item. Okay, so this is what we've seen in the part. We need to do something in the method section. We need to define this new function called add item, otherwise nothing will happen. Okay, I'll save the file. Okay, and so you can see currently now we already have this add button now added to our app, but if you click, nothing is going to happen yet. And if we open the developer tools and you're actually getting errors, let me put it on the side. If you can see, it says and property or method item is not defined. Yeah, and because we said in our code, it says when the button is clicked, we want to run add items, whatever that is, but we didn't define anything here. So it's fair enough. It's complaining. Okay, and as I said, in this case, we need to define this, add them to the method section of your view code. Okay. And so there's a little bit more description of how to do the v-on, and which you already explained. So the v-on is for event handler. That's like the directive, the keyword. It has to be always. And then the event name, in this case, will be click, could be other events. And followed after the v-on, this will be something that you want to do, calling usually a functions you defined. in the view instance. Okay, and here we already had methods. Again, make sure it's plural, has s at the end, and you could do this, and which is a key value format. You have, say, an add item, and it's the key, and its property itself is actually a function, which would work. I think you can also work, just say add item. Excuse me, and that also works. So basically just defines the function called item with no input. That probably work as well. And if it doesn't, we're going to change back to this format. And this way you write slightly less code compared to this one. Okay, and then because Vue is used a lot, so Vue introduced a shorthand just called @. So shorthand means I'm doing exactly the same thing, but just less typing. So this has 4 characters, this only has 1. So it's less typing. And so the top one is what we sing. We said V on click. That's what we have done so far. And then instead of doing that, you could do the same. Instead of V on comma, you can just use click. Okay, so obviously less typing, but that also just means there's something extra you have to remember. So we're gonna do that now. But once you get used to it, you probably will never go back to Beyond again. But Beyond is easier to read, I think, and in terms for someone, especially someone not familiar with Vue, and when we first look at code, Beyond, and is likely to tell them this may be something to do with event handler compared to just add symbol. Okay. And so now we can actually add something to the function here. In the slides, the method is called to add to cart. That's probably because, oh, it says add to item. So yeah, this probably should be an add item, and doesn't matter, but just make sure the function name you defined here inside the methods is same as the one you called here after add click. Just make sure that's consistent. And then in this here particularly, we said what it does is just adding this .product.id to the end of the cart array. Okay, and so here this again depends. That's just standard JavaScript thing, can be a bit tricky, but in this case it should refers to the Vue instance, and then this .product then would refer to this product here, and then .id and would refer to this ID here. And what it did is did a push, and that's a function from the cart, and which we defined as array. So the push is a function which add an element to the end of the array. So it will add this to the end of the cart array, but because it's empty, so it's the only thing there. And so in this case, we're only adding the ID to the cart. We're not adding any other product information to the cart. Either way should be fine, and just you're aware what is happening. Okay, so this is probably the easiest things you need to do, which we can do. So we could potentially say this dot cart, and then push this dot product dot id. Okay, so now I saved, and if we come to this page, and if we click add, at least there's no more error message. And if you go to the view part, view developer tools, and you can see there's a root. And then you should see the array here. And you can see, because you clicked once, now it's not empty anymore. It has one thing, which is one number. If I click again, okay, you have to manually refresh. And you can see there's another one. I clicked a few more times. Add more. Okay, so you can see now the cart starting to record or save the things we added to the shopping cart. Okay. Okay. So instead of doing input and type button and value equal to add click equal to add items, and you also can do using the button element, which achieve exactly the same effect. And in this time you would say button and add to cart or add, that will be the text here, depends on the equivalent of value. And then the v on click and equal to add to cart will be the same here. And here we say add click equal to add items. So you can also say add click equal to whatever the function name is in the method that's defined. Okay, and so it's just put everything together. We would have, now we're using the, and so up to here is the same as before. We had app, we had h1, some pictures and some text. Now we add the button. That's what we added here. And then this is the code, which is very similar. I just say, except with a different function name. This is called add to cart. We call it add item. And the function is only just do one line, yeah, which is okay for now. Okay, and so this is to show you, and when you're using the view developer tools inside Chrome, and you need to click the root to update, and which is similar to what we did here. You click the root, which shows you the array, but also every time you click the add button, it doesn't update automatically. It says if you click root again, it will update. Or you could click this refresh button, which will update as well. Then it will show the changes. Does not change automatically. That's just the behavior of this and view developer tools. Okay, and then so that's the add to cart button. And as we said, this should only be allowed when there's still inventory left. So you usually only have a limited amount of products. For example, I only have 5 items available, and you can't buy any more than that if it's all gone already. So this is where the check inventory comes in. And here, we're going to introducing something else called computed property. So the computed property is kind of like a mix of the data and methods. So it's used to store some values, but that values is not static, it might change. So you need to have a little bit computation, like some code in there. It's just not the number. Okay, and so one thing we want to do is to, on the checkout button, will show number of the items in the cart. So if the user add 3 to the cart, it should show 3 in the checkout button. So that's the, if I have the picture somewhere. No. Okay, just here. So what we want to do, we're going to check out, but also we want to show how many items are there in the checkout. So this will be somehow updated or dynamic updated when there's more items added to the cart. That's what we want to do there. Okay, let me come back to here. Okay, and so I'm going to use something called a computed property to do this. As I said, computed property is like a mix of the data and the methods. And so it can be bound and to a DOM elements, like anything you define in data. So you can use value to show on a page. But its value is dynamically derived from the state of the application. It's not preset. So it will recalculate its value every time when it's called. And it will change, automatically update when the value changes. And okay, so this is the code to using computed property. And the keywords, like the methods, data, EL, to be used here is called computed. So that's, you have to be exactly the same. Letter for letter. Okay, and then this will be your computed property name. Once it's defined, you can almost use just as a variable defined in the data section. But in this case, it's called cart item count. So it's a function. So this is the part where it's more like a method, because in the data property, you either have text string, or you have a number, or you have more complex case, maybe a JSON object, but you don't have a function afterwards. Yeah. So in this case, it's actually a function, and it's a very simple one. In this case, it just return this.cart.length or empty. And so when this.cast.length is equal to 0, and this will be false, and then it will just return nothing instead of say 0. Okay, and then this value, as you can see, will change, depends on how many things has been added to the shopping cart. As a result, if you use cart item count, and its value would change as user adding more things to the cart, shopping cart. Okay, this thing, the cart item count should not be in the data object, yeah, because it will change as. Okay, now we're gonna do the actual add to cart button, or the checkout button, sorry, the checkout button. And the first thing we do is actually we're gonna using something called font awesome to create an icon. Okay, so you can see this little shopping cart icon there. That's what we're gonna do. And so I guess the older way would be to including a picture of a shopping cart, but that's quite difficult, especially, for example, this is setting the text of a button, and you want to add a picture into, you can't use a button directly and then including a picture as part of the label. You can't really do that. And the way the font awesome work is actually to HTML, and this is just basically a special character. That's all. You know, so the character can be letters, numbers, or different language symbols, but also it can be even a picture or picture-like things. So what font awesome does is it predefined a number of these icons, and you can use just almost like a text where you can use text to include them. That's what we will do. And what you need to do is, and because this is external library, and you need to including this. Okay, and the only difference here, you are not including a JavaScript file, so you're not using script tag with source equal to something. You are using the format very similar to a CSS file, because the file you're going to include is a CSS file. So you would say link REL relationship. So this is actually a style sheet. So the CSS style sheet, and this is where the actual style sheet is. And so this is actual URL is just where there's online server hosting the font awesome CSS file. Okay, we're going to talk more about that later. Okay, and then this is the actual button for the checkout button. So we're going to actually using this. Okay, so if you remember, this is the double curly bracket, which is we used for data variable before, when you can show the values of the data variable defined in Vue. Here we're using the same syntax, but using apply. In the middle is the cart item count. If you remember it here, which is a computed property. So you can see the way we use it, almost like a data variable. Okay. So we're going to show the number of items in the shopping cart first, and followed by this part, which shows the icon itself. Sorry, this part shows the shopping cart icon. I'll explain how do you do that. So that's this part in the middle. And then finally the checkout. Checkout is just the text, which is this bit here. So that's finally get this button. You had a dynamically changing number, an icon from font awesome, and then finally some text. Yeah, we're going to go through this each bit in turn. Okay, and so first, and font awesome is not the only thing that provides this kind of function, which is you can add different icons to your web page, web app, or even mobile apps, and as text. Okay, and that's one of the first ones, and there are many other ones which are similar. Okay, and as I explained, it allows you to add icons to your page and as text instead of image, and then you can actually set the, for example, image size, so you would change text size, or even change text color to change the icon color. Okay, as we already explained, you need to first load it as the external CSS file. We saw that in the code before already. That's this line code here, which is the same code here. Okay, and maybe I'll start creating this now, so you can follow. So be clearer. Okay, so first we need to add this link to the code. I'm going to copy in my head section now. I'm going to including this. Okay, I'm linking to this font awesome. Might not even be the latest one now. It might updated already since last year. Okay, currently when I save this, if I look at my page, nothing will change yet because I haven't used anything yet. Okay, next step would be you need to find the icons that you want to use. And so what you do is you go to the font awesome page and then looking for among the free icons. So font awesome want to make money. So not all the fonts are not icons are free. Some of them not allowed to use. Or if you go to start from the font awesome page and go click on icons. Okay, and you can click on free and then this one. So it filters out everything, only leaving you the free ones they can use. So here it says have more than 1,600 icons. That's quite a few. And the better way, rather than say goes to look at for them, is just to search for them. For example, in this case, I'm looking for shopping cart and do it to filter out. So these are the ones available. I think this is probably the one I used in the picture. If I go back, yeah. But you don't have to. Basically, you can use any of those. Okay. What you need to know is you need to notice, for example, if we use this one this time, the name of this icon. You don't have to, okay. So that's this one, shopping cart. That's the text you need to remember. Okay, so this is the part where we're gonna using actually in your code to use this icon. You need to know that. And it's a bit small here, but you can see that's the text below here as well. Shopping cart. That's like the unique code for this icon when you use it. Okay, the other one is called Cart Plus. We're going to using shopping cart, which is slightly different. And then you add this to your page. So first, that's the span element. So span is like the little brother of the div element. So div defines kind of a breaking element, which allows you just group things together. And the span is also doesn't actually, if you just add a span to a page, it doesn't show anything. But what it does allow you to is allow you to group some text inside. Okay, so that means we are define the span element. This is the part which you add the icon. So that essentially defining the class of an element, just as you do with any CSS. So we say class equal to FAS, and that's just for font awesome. I'm not sure why they have S in it. And then FA hyphen, that's again font awesome. And then the cart plus is the part you have to match the text you get on the page. So in our case, we're gonna do shopping cart. What we're gonna do is FA hyphen shopping hyphen cart instead of this cart plus. Okay. Yeah. So that's all you need, and then it will. Okay, so let's go back and check. I'll kind of explain how the code works. So first we need to add this button here. Oh no, first we need to actually, let's add this one. So this will be after the method. We have this computed. And so this has to be exactly the same, so the view understand what it means. And this one we call cart item count. Might be able to get away doing this as well. So it will be very similar. Oops. Say the way we show in the slides is say, and then function. Do this. Yeah, that's one way. And you could do a anonymous function. For example, you can do, delete this. You do anonymous function or arrow function like this. That would work. And then for me, I'm just doing another way that hopefully would work as well, is by just define this as a function. Okay. And then what the return this dot cart. Yeah, this would in this case will refer to the view instance, but it's not always the case. You have to be very careful. This dot cart, then it would refer to this cart, and then lens. Okay, so this is a property, so there's no, it's not a function or empty. Okay. So this defines a computed property, and then that's something we can then use here in the button. So we're going to put this button just under or just after the site title. Oh, let me just briefly check the time. Okay, it's till 1 o'clock, but half an hour left. Okay, and so we're going to just put it under or just right after the title. We're doing a button. As I said, this button has 3 parts, and the first part shows the number of items in the cart. We're going to just using in this cart item count. Cart item count. Okay. Now I saved. Then if I go to my page, okay, and you can see there's a little button here already. Currently it's empty. Nothing in there. There's no text because the cart is empty, and we said when the length is 0, we return nothing. So there's no label on it yet. Okay, so that's what we expected. Okay, and next part is adding the icon. So I'm gonna using a span. Okay, just to make it, because this is only, even this is only one button, it can get a little bit complicated. So I'm gonna break that into 3 lines. This is where we added the shopping cart icon with a class equal to. So first FAs, so that means this is a font awesome icon, and then FA, and then followed by the icon name. So the cart plus is what we used. That would look like this. We're going to use a slightly different icon here, which is this one. Okay, so that name is called the shopping cart. That's why we're going to just put shopping cart here. Okay, and we save. Yeah, see, now at least have an icon there now. We maybe just give it a little bit of space, and then we just say checkout. Okay, this will just be text, and you can see, okay, now let's just give it a checkout. Okay, and so currently, the image is followed right after, which is not exactly what I wanted. Okay, this yeah, slightly lazy using 2BR, so I put this under a new line and give it a little bit of space. Okay, so now if I click the add button. Oops, it should. Okay, it didn't add anything yet. Okay, you can see now we have add 1 things to the array, and you can see this shopping cart. Oh, sorry, this checkout button actually shows there's 1 item, and add another one. Okay, and this is updated, and here there's 2. It shows there's 2, and 3, 4, and 5, and this will change. Yeah, so for this one, we've now done the checkout button, or at least the looks of it, and they haven't actually showed the page yet. Okay, we done explain this part, and you can use any other icons in the same way as we did here. And you just replace this bit with the kind of the name of the icon or the label of the icon. That's all you need to do. Okay, so the next part is actually to check in. So to make sure there's still inventory available. And if it's not, then we should not allow users to add more things to the shopping cart. Okay, and the first thing we do is just add a property and called available inventory, and to record how many inventory we have, how many items we have in stock. Okay, so that's straightforward. We're going to just have something called available inventory and give it a name. And so it doesn't really matter, 5, 10, 200, up to you. It just says for this product, for now we have 5. Okay, and then what we need to do is say we need to check the available inventory when user clicked add to cart button. If it's no longer available, we should stop people adding. And if it's available, we should add 1 to the shopping cart, but also reducing the available inventory by 1. So next time it's no longer 5, it will become 4. Okay. Okay. So here we're not changing the available inventory value directly yet. We want to do that after user click the actual checkout button. So before the user confirms they want to buy it, we'll leave the inventory value there. But for sure, we don't want the user to add more than 5 to the shopping cart if we only have 5 in stock. Okay, and to do this, we're going to using another computed property. It's called can add to cart. And this time we're not returning any numbers, we're just returning a Boolean values just to see whether user can still add more to the cart. So we say this.product.available inventory. So this.product.available inventory, if it's greater than this.cart.item count. So that will be this.cart item count, which is this one, which calculates how many items you already have in the cart. So we can do this because we only have 1 product. And so it doesn't matter how many we have in the cart, it must be the same count and the same product. So if we already, for example, have 5 items in the cart, and then this will become false because we can't add any more, then this will return false. And anything less than 5, you can still add more to your shopping cart. Okay, and so this is what we're going to do here. We'll can add to cart. Okay, function, and it will return this dot product dot available inventory is greater than this dot cart item count. Okay, and so this is like the simplified condition, and for the ones if you have more than 1 product, which is likely to be the case in most scenarios, and you can't just count the number of things in the shopping cart. You have to say check for a specific product how many are still left. Okay, and for now this should do. We just check how many, if there's more inventory, sorry, more stock than the items in the shopping cart. Okay, and you can see, and this is another computed property which you can use later, but also this computed property actually using the first defined computed property in there as well. Okay. And I saw someone raise the hand. Is there a question or?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question, but I think it's clear now. So,
okay.
So the cart item count, I want to ask, I mean, why can't we just return the array size and get it the value? But I think I understand why it's done into the in the computed method, because I think I'm not
Yeah.
sure here.
I mean,
So
it's a valid comment to say, and in this case, card item count is very simple. So you don't even have to define it. You can just replace it with this dot card dot length all the time. But sometimes this will be more complex and maybe 5, 6, or even 10 lines of code. And in those cases, define computed property will be much easier than have to repeat those code all the time.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so now we go on. Okay. And so this is, I mean, maybe not the best practice, but just to demonstrate. So there's a new view directive called the vShow, which allows you to show, actually more often used to hide the element on the page. Okay, so what here we're trying to do is say, if we can't, if we don't have any more stock, for example, user already had 5 products in their shopping cart, we're gonna stop user from adding more. There's different ways to stop user from adding more. You can disable the button, but in this case, we're gonna just hide the add button. So the button is gonna disappear. And this is probably not the best user experience and not recommended, but just for demonstration purpose, we're gonna try that. Better way is probably just disable the button, set its status to disable, then user can't click anymore. But here we're gonna just using vShow, which allows you to hide a button. And so what we're doing is we say vShow equal to can add to cart. If you remember, this is the computed property, and then it will return a true or false value. So that means this button will show or visible if this value is true. Once this becomes false, this button will disappear. And here the condition for the value to be false is when the available inventory is no longer larger than the cart item count. Okay. So we can do this now. So we say, where is our button? The button is here. We still use this one, but it's okay. So in the example, we use the button element. Here we use the input element, but the way to work is exactly the same. We just add vShow equal to can add to cart. Yeah. So that's so when this condition becomes false, it will hide this input button. So if we go to this page, okay, I'll click on the root. It shows currently the data you have, and I can start adding. And you can see 4, now it's 4, and I click one more, the add button should disappear. Yeah, which is exactly what happened. So it's disappeared, and because this condition can add to cart is no longer true, and then the view would hide this input element, which is a button. Okay, as I explained before, and this is probably not the best user experience. And so, okay, that's the example. And probably it's better to have a disabled button instead of hiding the button. Okay. Okay. In this case, we're going to using vIf and vElse. So these are again 2 other view directives. So that was the vShow, which is the one before, and then the vIf and else. So it works very similar to the if else in any programming languages, JavaScript or any other. Okay, yeah. And so again, so this is using a slightly maybe not the most efficient way. And so what it does is says, if the can add to cart button or can add to cart value is true, we're going to show this button. And if this is true, not true, we're going to show a different button, which is disabled. So basically, we have two buttons. One is enabled, the other is disabled. Then depends on the value of can add to cart, we'll choose which one will display on the page. Okay, yeah, as I said, we have two buttons. We only show one at a time, and this will be depends on the whether we can still add more to the cart. Okay. So let me see. Okay, if we changing what we have now, maybe easier. I'll just comment this one out. So we have this first. We have a button, and this one. If I do v on click or say at click equal to add item. Okay, and I'll just call it add instead of add to cart, and the difference will be here. We say v if equal to can add to cart. So that means this button will only appear when this value is true. So almost very similar to this v show equal to can add to cart. And but the difference will be then you can have a second one. You can say you don't need to say add click now. This the second one is the disabled one. I think I can just say disabled and v else. Okay, and so what you're seeing here is the only difference is here I had the second button and it will only display when this v failed, and this button is still add, but it's disabled by default. Let me see if anything else I missed. Okay, and so this is what it looks like when the button is disabled. Let me see. I can start adding something. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then number 5. Okay, so now you can see this button is disabled. You can't click it really anymore. But this is better than say it completely disappears. And there's other ways to do this. More efficient one, and it just has one button, and you can bind its disabled, which itself is a property, to can add to cart, or the opposite of can add to cart. Then it will be disabled. Use one button and decide whether it's disabled or not. Did I? Okay, I didn't include that in the. Okay, I'll maybe do this very quickly. So we already learned vbind. And we say disabled equal to the opposite. So we can add. Yeah. So just because we're running out of time. So what happened here is when can add to cart is true, the opposite was false, then the disabled property of this button will be set to false. So that means not disabled. And when this becomes true, then this will be, when this becomes false and the displayable property will become true and the button will be disabled. And then the shorthand to do this is just column bind. and it does the same thing. 5, and it's disabled.
I'm sorry, can you please repeat that? I don't quite follow.
Oh, okay. So first is just say the v bind and semicolon. And this one, you can use shorthand without saying v bind, just say semicolon. That's equivalent of v bind semicolon. What is will bind the value of the disabled property of the button to this value. Right? And then the only thing is you have to reverse the can add to cart value, is because when you can add to cart, you don't want it to be disabled. So you want it to be false. And when you can't add to cart, you want it to be disabled. That's why this exclamation mark that is.
Okay, thank you. I was confused about the exclamation point.
Yeah. Let's just reverse the value. Okay. Okay, and then finally, and hopefully you can finish, and is the show checkout the page. And because what we want is we want to user click this button and then actually go to the page, which actually shows the list of the items in the shopping cart, and hide the actually product information. That's usually how these e-commerce app works. Okay, but so far we don't have any checkout page yet, which doesn't really matter. We'll add those later. Okay, then what we'll do is say when the user click this button, checkout button, we'll try to switch to the checkout page and hide the product page. And if we click it again, the same checkout button, and we should come back to this product page, essentially close the checkout page. Okay, and so the way we do this, again, is having two pages, both coded in the code. So in the view with the code, the product page, which as we already did, but we're going to also code the checkout page in there as well. And then depends on how many times user clicks the checkout button, then we choose to show one page and hide the other. So first we'll show the product page and hide the checkout page. And once user click once, then we're going to hide the product page, show the checkout, and you click again, and then we switch. Yeah. Okay, and to do this, we're going to have a new property called the show product. This is just as a way to record whether we actually showing the product page or not. Obviously, that's the opposite. If you have something called a show checkout, and then they will have opposite values. Okay, and this is the part, okay, slightly complicated. All it does is just swapping the value of show product. So when it's true, it will change it to false. When it's false, it will change it to true. Okay, I'll try to explain. And so first, there's a name of the function, just called the show check out. Not the best name, but it will be consistent. So it says this dot show product. And so that's what we defined here, show product. Equal to this dot show product, still the same thing. Okay. And this bit is a JavaScript shorthand for if then else. It says, the question mark says if this dot show product is true, it will become the first part before the column. So that means if this dot show product is true, its value will become false. Otherwise, or else, its value will become true. Essentially, that means if this dot product is false, and it will become true.
Sorry, I don't know, but this feels some sort of redundant because we're doing the true and false again. How about we just do the you just using the itinerary operator? So instead of doing the equals to this just dot show product, what if we do the question mark true or false? I don't know. This seems sort of redundant to me.
Yeah,
I
this,
think
this is
if
something
we
new. You need to get used to it. And so I'm just typing. Okay, so this one line, that's exactly the same as these lines. Okay, this bottom one, the one you would understand. You would say,
okay.
if this dot product, if it's true, and you set its value equal to false. And else, that means this product is not true, this is false, and you set its value to true.
Okay.
Which is exactly the same as you do here. It depends on this, the value of this expression. And if it's true, it becomes the first value. If it's not true, it becomes the second value. And it doesn't have to be true or false. It can be 1 or 2 as well. It just says something like this. So say this dot product equal to this dot question mark. And this is say this dot product greater than 3, for example.
If we do this.
And if it's this dot product greater than 3, and it will becomes 1. And if it's not greater than 3, it will becomes 2. And if you do here, it will be something like this. And this is just say some way to write a little bit less code, and which you would see, and because people will start using it part of the ES6. Okay, I'm gonna just do I'm gonna keep this one here, so in case you need to reread. Okay, so basically, and what happens is every time you run this function, it will change the values of this dot show product. This is just a kind of concise way to write it. That's all. You could write exactly like this, that's completely fine, or do exactly the same thing. Okay, yeah, it's called ternary operation in JavaScript, something new introduced in ES6. It's a shorthand. And the first will be the condition, will be this dot product, it could be this dot product, or say product count greater than 5 or something. If it's true, it will return the first value. If it's false, it will return the second value. That's all it is. So this will be equivalent to, yeah, exactly here. If this dot product is true, this dot product equal to false, else this product equal to true. The show checkout methods definition is missing. Yeah. Okay. And then also, this is also the other way. We said we could. The initial way would be say you define show checkout as a keyword, and you define the function like this, which would also work. And what the way we did is again a shorthand, so allow us to write less code. Just say show checkout as a function without actually defining it and say what it is. Yeah, so that's the equivalent of doing this. Or this part can be potentially used, replaced with arrow functions. You can say pair of brackets, empty brackets, and then equal and greater than sign. That's all the same. Okay. So now what we do is we can add this function or method we just defined to the button, to the checkout button, this checkout button, and that will start switching between the two. But first, it will just change the values of the show product, and then we use that to decide which page is going to show. So just for this button, we're going to say at click, the same as beyond click, and equal to show checkout. That's going to run this function, which will change the value of show product every time you click. And again, if you look at this, and currently you wouldn't see anything yet, but if you look at this, you can say this show product is false. And if I click this, need to refresh. Ooh. It didn't change. Show me the route. Okay, it's already changed. Okay, I click it again. Okay, now it's changed to true. If I click again, I have to refresh. I'll change to false. But every time I click a button now, it will change the or switch the value. Swap. Okay, and then this is the last page. So what we will then do is we can use a VIF, and depends on the value of show product, then we'll decide whether to show the checkout page or the product page. Okay, and so what we're going to do now is, this is my app, and this is the H1, then we have this checkout button, BR. Okay, that's all fine. And here we're gonna say define a div, and this will be my product page, and I will say if equal to show product. We're gonna show this, and then I'll define another div. I'll say v else, and this will be my checkout page. And for now, I just say checkout. And so currently the checkout page only have a title, but we can at least see it's working. So I have this one, and then I click, you can see, okay, now it only shows the checkout. If I click again, it goes back to the checkout page. The reason is because every time I click, I change the value of what is it, show product, and depends on that value, it will give you either this product page or the checkout page, one of them. Okay, that's it. So in terms of reading, that will be the chapter 3 of the book, the Vue.js in action.